Hey everybody, this is Matt and we're at Texas Toast Guitars. Thanks for watching. You may have noticed that I corrected the light gathering ability of my camera. Actually, Joy fixed that for me. As it turns out, I pressed some button and something happened and an exposure was exposed. In any case, I think we got it figured out now, thanks to Joy. So in today's video, I thought we would radius this fretboard because in a recent live stream, somebody was asking me what the best way to do that was. And what the hell's going on out there? And so anyway, they were asking me how to do that. And I mentioned that I have seen people try this with radiused blocks and have a lot of trouble with it. And I've seen people try this with $500,000 CNC machines and have trouble with it. So I want to show you the way that I do it here, and I think it's the best way. I'm not going to say it's the only way, but it's the best way that works every single time for me, okay? And of course, I didn't invent this. This is something that somebody who's way smarter than I am came up with. And that is this swinging radius sander rig that we got from Grizzly and then modified to be better suited for what we're doing. I'm going to talk a little bit about that coming up here. But I have this neck, and this is for one of the Texas Toast Guitars prostitute models, and it's just sort of a thing that I was doing during a workshop to demo on, and so now it's time to radius the fretboard and get everything looking good before frets. When I say radius the fretboard and get it looking good, that's kind of a big deal because right now it's flat, okay? There's no radius on it at all, and it's dead flat from the nut all the way to, in this case, the 24th fret and beyond. It's nice and straight, nice and flat. When we put the radius on, regardless of the radius, we don't want any dips, we don't want any bumps, we want it to be flat and radius. Now, this is, some people kind of freak out and they're like, well, actually, what about a conical radius, or what about, no matter what radius you put on here, you should be able to take a straight edge at one point and put it on here and it be no light underneath it, okay? Now, you can probably angle it, you know what I mean? Like, if you have a radius on here and you twist it, you can get light under it. What I'm talking about is along the plane of the string, it needs to be flat, okay? The radius also has to be whatever the radius is. Let's just say, for the sake of conversation, 12 inches. It needs to be 12 inches here, 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 all the way down. At any point you measure it, it needs to be 12 inches. Now, of course, if you have a conical radius, let's say you're using 10 to 16, it would be 10 at some place, usually generally the nut, and 16 at another place, generally the last fret. And then in between, it's going to be whatever it is, but it's going to be flat on the top, even though it has a conical radius. Cool? There's probably a better way to say that, and if I'm getting it wrong, I apologize. Or if I'm confusing anyone, I apologize. But the radius needs to be consistent, and the string path needs to be flat. Okay, I'm going to get my neck. Here it is, attached to my swinging arm apparatus. And if you're familiar with the Grizzly tool, you might notice that my swinging arm apparatus looks different than how it comes from the factory. That's because I have ours set up to work exclusively with our necks, okay? So that means that if you're using one of our necks, you can't get it wrong, but if you're not using one of our necks, you probably can't get it right without a little bit of adjustment. And what I'm talking about there is, you'll notice that rather than a slot that's infinitely adjustable, I have for these posts here that are the radius point, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes to choose from, which means I can do 7 1/4, 10, 12, 14, and 16. Or I can do combinations if I need to use this for a conical radius. So yes, you can do The most I could do would be 7 1/4 to 16 conical radius, or anything in between. So you can, in fact, use this tool to make that kind of radius on your fretboard. By the way, some people call that a compound. I call it a conical because I think that compound radius is confusing. In my mind, I read that as it's 10" and then it's 16", not like a cone. I think conical radius better describes what that looks like, okay? So let's go over to the machine and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, gang, I've got my neck in my neck swinging neck apparatus attached to my Grizzly edge sander, and I've got a 60 grit belt on here. We're gonna go through 2 different belt abrasive levels, and we're gonna start with 60 to get the most of the material off. Remember when I said that my apparatus might be different from yours? That's because the distance from each one of these, center of each one of these holes, in this case I'm going to be using 12, so I've got 7 1/4, 10, 12, and you'll notice that's where my pivot point is. The distance from the center of that hole to my belt is 12 inches. That means that my neck and my fretboard have to be roughly the same. Roughly, they need to be pretty much essentially exactly the same distance every single time. So my necks are 1.5 inches tall with a 1/4 inch, or I'm sorry, 5/16 thick fretboard. So all of my necks have to be like that in order to work with this rig. So if you set yours up differently, that's fine. You just have to remember that it's set up differently. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn this guy on, and we're going to swing the apparatus over the belt, and that's going to impart the radius for us. It's probably easier to show you than it is to explain it. So what I'm doing here is actually fine-tuning the distance of my fretboard to my platen on my sander, because I can feel it. There's a spot right in the center where it's not removing any material, which is fine. I just have to fine-tune these wheels so that they go down. Now, as you can imagine, it's possible to push this down, put more force on this than is required. Just like any power tool, or any tool for that matter, you want to let the tool do the work and not try to impose your will on it, okay? And we can look, I can tell right here, I still have a flat spot, but so towards the body, I still have a flat spot. Towards the neck, my radius is looking good. Now some of that could be because I have a gap here, so I'm going to push a little harder just on this portion of the back of the neck. That's actually getting it. So I don't think I want to make any more fine-tuning adjustments. I just want to just press gently on the back of the heel here. Okay. Now I can tell, because I've done this a handful of times, that I've gotten all I'm going to get with my more aggressive belt. And I think I told you this was 60, and it is in fact 60. So now what I'm going to do is finish the the process with a 150 grit belt, which will do two things. It will allow me to make sure that kind of fine tune my radius, and it's going to get rid of a bunch of those big 60 grit scratches, okay? Because the 150 abrasive is shorter than the 60 grit abrasive, I know I'm going to have to lower the unit down, and through experience I know that it's about a half a turn on my fine tuning wheels. So we'll go ahead and load our fine tuning wheels a half a turn. And yes, I have marked these wheels so I know how much I'm moving it. You know what I mean? Give me an idea here. All right, so let's get it cranked up again, and we'll get rid of the 60 grit scratches, and we'll hopefully get our radius perfect and flat and nice, and we'll be good to go. So you want to put a little bit of down pressure on this, but like I'm saying, you don't want to really crank on it, because you can get this to be wrong. The tool takes a little bit of skill, right? Not a lot, but just a little bit. Okay, because we had to push gently on the back end of this heel last time, we're going to go ahead and do that too this time. And I should be able to, I could do this for, 3 or 4 days, and as long as I don't adjust anything, or as long as something doesn't come out of whack, once I get it right, it should just be perfect. Have a look here. It sure looks good, and we've got everything. So let's measure. All right, so I pulled the swinging arm apparatus off of the sander, and now I'm going to check using my radius gauge here. And what I just want to do is make sure that this gauge matches my my radius, and I want to do it in as many points as I can. Okay, I mean, you could check at every single fret location if you really wanted to. Generally speaking, once you do this a few times, you'll be like, check it here, check it here, check it here, and be okay. It seems to be that on my machine, everything except for the treble side nearest the body is always perfect. So that's the one where I want to pay the most attention to. So looks like at the 1st fret we look good. Let's come down to like the 5th or 6th fret looking good, 12 looking good. Let's come all the way to 24, which is the lowest part closest to the body, and it looks like $100 million. It matches perfectly. Now all I have to do is pull the screws that hold my neck to my swinging arm apparatus, and we'll be done. Now, a couple things I want to talk about before we call it a day. So you'll remember I had these screws going into my neck, holding it in place. Now, as you can imagine, I can't go too far with these, or when I cut all this material away to shape the neck, there'll be these weird, great big holes. So again, you have to match. Then this is my apparatus, it's not yours, so you'll have to figure out a way to do yours. If you're wanting to not use screws, or if you're wanting to not have this much neck material, totally understandable. I'm sure you could use double-sided tape or something like that. But I really like the mechanical attachment use. Like I said, these screws go in through a big chunk of aluminum, okay? And they hold my neck in place. And of course, when I go to shape the neck, Remember, this is the actual maple in this case is 1.5 inches tall. So I know for a fact I didn't go down even a half inch into this material, but if I did, that would be more than enough to grind all of this stuff away. And you won't see these holes. They're sacrificial holes, okay? So it holds the neck into position and doesn't come flying off. And I've got a perfectly radiused 12-inch fretboard, okay? So that's pretty cool. This is actually ambrosia maple. That's what these streaks are here. These holes are from ambrosia beetles. And this is a Cataloche fretboard that I got from my buddy Dan at Tonewood Experts. Okay, so there you go. Now, there are lots of ways to do this, but there are a few ways that are as fast and as accurate, okay? The hard truth of the matter is that doing this by hand is tricky, at the very least. And I'm not suggesting that you can't get good at it, but I am suggesting that if you do a lot of these, this tool will save you so much time and so much headache. I've seen some other tools where they have like a router that kind of rides over that. I've tried that in the past and they work okay. Here's when they don't work okay. First of all, you have to sand the router cut marks out of it. That you just do. And if you start with sanding, you don't have to sand the sanding out of it. You guys saw that I went from 60 to 150 grit, and this is smooth like butter. So you don't have to, it's ready to go. If you have a router sled that does something like that, generally you have to sand it. If you have a $500,000 CNC machine and you router cut it, you generally have to sand it. So I just eliminate the middleman. The other neat thing about this is it works regardless of whether or not you have something that is, well, let's say you had a maple fretboard. Maple fretboards aren't particularly fragile. Let's say you switch to a roasted flame maple fretboard. Really fragile. Anytime you use a cutting tool on that, be prepared to cut close and sand the rest of the way. So the nice thing about the abrasive radius technique is, if it's a technique, the nice thing about the abrasive radiusing is that there's virtually no way you can get tear out and chip out, okay? And I realize that there's gonna be some people who say, you know, my thing doesn't do that. Okay, cool. In my experience, figured woods and fragile woods tear out and chip, and that's just hard cheese. Okay, so anyway, gang, if you have any questions about this, one more thing. You will notice that my swinging arm apparatus is at an angle. Someone's gonna say, why is that? It's really just to use more of the belt. It's still flat on the platen, and in fact, if I got a straight edge and put it on here, there'd be zero light under here. This is dead flat, except for this radius. Okay, so don't worry about if you buy your swinging arm apparatus, you can set it up straight. I angled mine and it works out terrifically. So guys, if you have any questions about what we did in the video today, please leave them in the comment section below. If you appreciate content like this, I would love it if you went over to our Patreon page and joined up. Even $1 a month goes a long way. I almost said $1 a day. Even $1 a month goes a long way to helping me bring you guys cool content like this. You can also sign up on YouTube. It's the exact same thing, only I get money from a different revenue source, etc., etc. Sign up. It's easy and fun. So until next time, this is Matt at Texas Toast Guitars reminding you that if you're so smart, start your own YouTube channel. That's what I did. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next time.